My sister laughed during dinner. "Meet my fiancé, a ranger." She mocked my uniform. Then he saw the Special Forces patch, froze instantly, snapped to attention, and barked. That was the explosive end to the evening. The fuse actually started burning 5 hours earlier in the suffocating heat of my parents' living room. Harper stood perfectly still on the vintage Persian rug, holding a heavy ceramic mug of scalding black coffee. She stared at me from across the room. Her eyes locked onto the simple, understated civilian dress I had chosen for her engagement dinner. She took one deliberate step forward, faked a clumsy stumble, and violently flicked her wrist. Boiling liquid splashed across the front of the pale fabric. The wet material instantly glued itself to my skin, searing my stomach and chest. I stepped forward to confront her. Harper immediately lunged. She drove her shoulder hard into my chest, utilizing her entire body weight to shove me backward until my spine slammed against the heavy oak doorframe. The wood dug into my shoulder blades. She leaned in dangerously close, her breath hot and smelling of artificial sweetener and malice. "Are you seriously going to cling to the wall and play the victim over a few drops of water?" she hissed, her voice vibrating with pure venom. "You are already pathetic, so stop acting. Get out of my way, failure. Do not even think about scratching my $1,000 dress. You are only fit for your dirty little truck washing uniform anyway. Today is about me. You are just background noise." My father sat exactly 3 feet away on the leather sofa. He watched the entire physical assault unfold. He took a slow, methodical sip of his chamomile tea, set the delicate porcelain cup on the coaster, and sighed heavily, looking at the ceiling instead of at his daughters. "Just let it go, Phoenix," he muttered. His voice carried the pathetic weight of a man who surrendered his spine decades ago. "It is just a piece of clothing. Your mother can soak it. Do not cause a scene and ruin your sister's big day. You know how she gets when she is stressed." I clamped my jaw shut. The metallic taste of adrenaline flooded my mouth. I pulled my phone from my pocket, opened a new message, and texted a single contact to permanently adjust the seating arrangements for the restaurant tonight. I locked the screen and slid the device back into my pocket. The trap was set. I am Phoenix Allen. I am 32 years old, and my tolerance for family dysfunction evaporated completely on that Persian rug. I turned away from my father, walked up the stairs to my childhood bedroom, and stripped off the ruined, coffee-stained dress. I balled the ruined fabric up and threw it straight into the trash can. I pulled my service uniform out of the protective garment bag. The dark green fabric felt heavy, structured, and profoundly familiar. It smelled of starch and discipline. I fastened the brass buttons, feeling the cold metal press against my fingertips. I rolled the sleeves up tightly above my elbows, a habit formed over years of grueling field operations. Then I grabbed my thick wool trench coat and draped it completely over my shoulders, deliberately and carefully hiding the classified operational instructor patch sewn onto my right arm. The car ride to the steakhouse in downtown Charlotte felt like breathing inside a sensory deprivation tank. My parents sat up front in the luxury sedan. My father kept his hands locked on the steering wheel at exactly 10 and 2, his knuckles white. My mother stared blankly out the passenger window, actively pretending the hostile atmosphere did not exist. They remained completely silent, perfectly compliant in their cowardice. Harper sat next to me in the back seat, practically vibrating with toxic nervous energy. She twisted her expensive diamond engagement ring around her finger, the sharp facets catching the passing amber streetlights. Her voice sliced through the low hum of the engine, sharp and commanding. "You are going to sit at the far end of the table tonight. Do you understand me? You will not speak to Mark. You will not talk about your pathetic little government job. You will not embarrass me with your absolute mediocrity. He is an Army Ranger. He is actual elite military, not some glorified gate guard who washes supply trucks for a living. Honestly, sharing the same oxygen as him is an insult to his rank." I turned my head and stared at the dark, blurring highway. For 15 straight years, this was the exact role my parents assigned to me. I was the family shock absorber. I took Harper's venom, her insults, and her physical shoves so they could pretend we were a normal, happy household. I remembered being 16 years old, standing in that exact same living room, watching her literally rip my early college acceptance letters into shreds. She dropped the pieces into the roaring fireplace just because she had failed her own entrance exams that same morning. My mother's solution to that horrific act of sabotage was to take Harper out for a luxury spa day, to calm her frayed nerves. I swallowed that injustice. I packed a single military duffel bag at 18, left the house and built a life composed of brutal discipline, freezing mud and absolute silence. Tonight the air in the car tasted like copper. My patience was gone, replaced by a cold mathematical calculation. I pulled my phone from my coat pocket. I read the confirmation text from a former subordinate. He managed the luxury steakhouse we were currently heading toward. He survived my elite training selection 3 years ago in the frozen woods of the northern training grounds. Tonight I just needed a simple logistical favor. We pulled up to the towering glass-walled entrance of the restaurant. The valet opened the heavy doors, letting the crisp night air rush in. The hostess greeted us immediately, recognizing my last name from the altered reservation. She led us straight through the crowded, loud main dining floor. We bypassed the regular seating entirely. She guided us to a highly exclusive alcove surrounded by tall frosted glass partitions, designed for high-profile clients. I took the corner seat, keeping my heavy wool coat firmly wrapped around my shoulders. I glanced through the quarter-inch gap in the frosted glass directly to my right. Sitting in the adjacent VIP booth, swirling a gin martini, was Mr. Sterling. He was the chief executive officer of Harper's prestigious public relations firm. The visual barrier between our tables was solid, but the acoustics in the alcove were completely flawless. Every sharp consonant, every cruel insult spoken at our table would funnel straight into his space with crystal clarity. Harper pulled out her leather chair. She adjusted her $1,000 silk dress and flashed a fake glowing smile at the approaching waiter, completely oblivious to the execution block she had just stepped onto. The board was set. 3 women in skin-tight designer dresses clicked their stilettos across the polished marble floor and stopped at our table. Harper stood up quickly, kissing their cheeks, her voice pitching an octave higher in a desperate display of social dominance. She gestured toward me with a dismissive flick of her wrist, treating me like a pile of garbage left in the corner of a luxury showroom. "Everyone meet my tax leech of a sister," she announced. Her voice echoed sharply off the frosted glass. "Almost 32 and does nothing but guard a gate and salute officers all day. Look at me, Phoenix. I make 6 figures. I am about to be named junior vice president, and you are rotting in a corner living off the government. Honestly, I would rather tell my friends I am an only child than admit I share blood with an uneducated peasant like you." Her friends giggled behind their manicured hands, sipping their champagne. The air in the alcove smelled of roasted garlic, expensive perfume, and pure arrogance. My mind snapped backward for a fraction of a second. I remembered the heavy cream envelopes from the universities. I remembered the exact sound of tearing paper. I watched the edges curl, turn black, and turn to ash while my mother simply looked at the floor. They broke me then. I spent months staring at my bedroom ceiling, believing I was a worthless burden. But today I am the one holding the hammer. Today Harper's voice just sounded like desperate, meaningless static. She thought I was a victim. She did not realize I audit human breaking points for a living. Harper shifted in her leather chair, crossing her legs. Her eyes darted over my shoulder and locked onto the small gap in the glass partition. She stopped breathing. The color drained from her face, then flooded back in a bright, blotchy red. She finally noticed Mr. Sterling sitting just 3 feet away in the VIP booth. Total panic hijacked her carefully curated features. She stared at my heavy trench coat, her mind spinning, terrified my quiet, unpolished presence would somehow poison her pristine corporate aesthetic in front of the man who controlled her career. She stood up abruptly, smoothing the invisible wrinkles from her skirt. She plastered a look of profound, exhausted tragedy across her face and walked directly over to his table. I remained perfectly still in my chair. I listened to the execution of her own character. Mr. Sterling, Harper whispered, her tone dripping with manufactured grief. "I am so terribly sorry if there is any tension coming from our table tonight. My family is dealing with a lot. My younger sister, she is severely mentally unstable. She is a complete deadbeat. We brought her out tonight purely out of charity, but she is causing a scene and refusing to cooperate. Please excuse her erratic behavior." Mr. Sterling set his martini down on the polished wood. He nodded slowly, his eyes narrowing as he absorbed her toxic lies. At our table, my father stared a hole into his empty ceramic bread plate. My mother aggressively folded and unfolded her white cloth napkin. They offered zero defense. They sat in absolute silence, letting Harper paint me as a deranged charity case to a corporate billionaire. I checked my heavy steel watch. Mark was exactly 10 seconds away from walking through the front entrance of the restaurant. The waiter appeared, placing a tall crystal glass of iced water directly in front of me. Condensation dripped down the thick sides, pooling on the white linen tablecloth. I counted the seconds in my head. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The heavy brass doors at the front of the restaurant swung wide open. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a sharp, tailored navy suit stepped inside, scanning the crowded room. Mark. I reached for my glass. I flicked my wrist with calculated precision. The heavy crystal tipped over, sending freezing water cascading across the table and splashing directly onto the lapel of my uniform. Harper gasped loudly, rushing back to our table just as Mark approached the alcove. "Look what you did, you clumsy idiot!" Harper shrieked, entirely abandoning her fake, tragic persona. I stood up. I unbuttoned the heavy wool trench coat and let it slide completely off my shoulders, tossing it over the back of the mahogany chair. The dark green fabric of my Class A uniform caught the warm, ambient lighting of the steakhouse. My sleeves remained rolled tight above the elbows, fully exposing the stark, classified elite operations instructor patch sewn directly onto my right shoulder. Mark closed the distance to our table. A massive, confident smile stretched across his face. He extended his large right hand toward my father, ready to play the charming future son-in-law. His eyes shifted toward me. He stopped mid-stride. His outstretched hand froze, suspended in mid-air. His gaze dropped from my face and locked dead onto the dark fabric of my right shoulder. The color vanished completely from his cheeks. A thick bead of sweat instantly formed at his hairline. Every ounce of relaxed civilian charm evaporated from his muscular frame in a single millisecond. The veins in his neck strained against his starched white collar. His spine locked bones straight. He pulled his right foot back, slamming his heavy leather heels together. The sharp crack of his shoes echoed violently off the frosted glass. He threw his right hand up to his brow in a razor-sharp, flawless salute. His chest expanded. He sucked in a massive breath and barked at the top of his lungs. "Reporting, ma'am, apologies for the delay." Harper's jaw unhinged. She stared at Mark. She stared at me, her brain completely short-circuited. She lunged forward, grabbing Mark by the bicep, digging her acrylic nails deep into the expensive fabric of his suit jacket. "Are you crazy?" she screeched. Her voice cracked, desperate and shrill, shattering the elegant atmosphere of the dining room. "What are you doing? Why are you saluting this piece of trash? Put your hand down. She is just a gate guard." Mark ripped his arm out of her grip with terrifying force. The violent momentum of his movement spun Harper off balance, sending her stumbling backward until her hips slammed into the edge of the dining table. He looked at her with pure, unadulterated disgust. His upper lip curled in raw revulsion. "Shut your mouth," Mark roared. The sheer volume of his voice pinned her to the spot. "You are a disgusting liar. This is Commander Allen. She is the elite operations instructor for the most brutal survival phase on this planet. She literally holds the lives of my entire unit in her hands." Mark reached into his inside jacket pocket. He pulled out the velvet box containing the diamond engagement ring, slammed it down onto the damp white linen tablecloth and backed away from her as if she were radioactive. "Do not ever contact me again." He turned on his heel and marched straight out the front doors, the heavy brass swinging shut behind him. Harper gasped for air. Her chest heaved rapidly. Dark streaks of mascara bled into the corners of her eyes, tracking down her pale, terrified cheeks. The social execution was absolute. The three women in silk dresses physically dragged their chairs backward. The wooden legs scraped loudly against the marble floor. They recoiled from her, pulling their designer bags onto their laps like she carried a contagious flesh-eating disease. My mother clamped both hands over her mouth, her eyes wide with absolute terror choking on her own breath. My father slouched deep into his chair, physically shrinking away from the blast zone, paralyzed by his own lifelong cowardice. Nobody spoke. The air felt thick, suffocating under the crushing weight of Harper's shattered ego. She was drowning in the wreckage of her own arrogance. Mr. Sterling stepped around the glass partition. He stood tall, slowly adjusting his tailored silk cuffs. He looked down at Harper. His expression carried the cold, clinical detachment of a surgeon examining a rotting tumor. "I heard every single toxic word," Mr. Sterling said. His voice remained low, terrifyingly calm, carrying across the silent alcove. "I heard you assault your sister's character. I heard your pathological lies. You just called a decorated military commander a mentally unstable charity case directly to my face." Harper raised two trembling hands. "Sir, please let me explain. I did not mean it." "You are fired, Harper," he interrupted. The words hit her like a physical strike to the jaw. You possess zero integrity. You have the emotional control of a toddler. A deceitful, malicious bully like you has absolutely no place representing my firm or managing my clients. Have your desk completely cleared out by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Security will escort you off the premises." He turned his gaze toward me, gave a short, deeply respectful nod, and walked away into the main dining room. I remained standing. My uniform felt perfectly crisp against my skin. My breathing stayed completely even. My heart beat at a slow, steady rhythm. I watched the monster my parents created finally suffocate under the weight of her own reflection. The trap had snapped shut with flawless precision. Harper collapsed. Her knees hit the hard marble floor with a sickening thud. She sobbed, pulling violently at her own hair, surrounded by the absolute wreckage of her life. 3 minutes. That was all it took to strip away her Ranger fiancé, her 6-figure promotion, and her meticulously fabricated high society status. Her wealthy friends stood up in unison. They offered 0 words of comfort. They simply grabbed their designer clutches and power-walked toward the exit, abandoning her without a single backward glance. My parents finally moved. Panic flooded their pale, terrified faces. My mother scrambled out of her chair, dropping to her knees to grab Harper's shaking shoulders. Harper shoved her away violently, screaming incoherently. My father stood up. He actually took a desperate step toward the VIP booth, hoping to chase down Mr. Sterling and beg for her job. He stopped halfway. The chief executive officer was already gone. My father spun around and turned his frantic, pathetic eyes toward me. "Phoenix," he stammered. The cowardly desperation in his voice made my stomach turn. "Call him back. Call Mark right now. Use your rank. Order him to come back here. You have to fix this right now." I adjusted my uniform cuffs. I smoothed the dark fabric over my chest, maintaining my immaculate posture. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a crisp $100 bill, and dropped it onto the damp white tablecloth to cover my spilled water. I stepped closer to my father. He physically recoiled, shrinking under my shadow. I looked him dead in the eyes, analyzing the raw terror in his pupils. "You fed a monster for 15 years just to keep the peace," I said. Every syllable dropped like ice onto the table. "You demanded I bleed so she could shine. You chose her comfort over my dignity every single time. Congratulations, the peace is officially broken, and as of right now, I have no family." I turned my back. I marched straight out of the alcove. The heavy brass doors parted for me, letting the crisp Charlotte night air wash over my face. Behind me, the muffled sounds of Harper's hysterical wailing faded into the ambient noise of the city. I left them there completely severed, forced to finally sit in the catastrophic ruin they built with their own hands. The fallout did not end at the restaurant doors. Reality is not a movie, it is a ruthless auditor, and it came to collect every single debt my sister owed. The following Monday, her termination was made brutally permanent. Harper lost her salary, her upcoming promotion, and her primary corporate account, worth $150,000. In a desperate, arrogant attempt to regain control, she filed a frivolous, wrongful termination and defamation lawsuit against the public relations firm. She severely underestimated Mr. Sterling. He unleashed a team of corporate lawyers who completely dismantled her fabricated narrative. The civil court judge dismissed her case with prejudice, explicitly citing her malicious intent, and ordered Harper to pay $94,600 in attorney fees and punitive sanctions. Her financial collapse was absolute. She defaulted on her luxury downtown apartment, missing 3 consecutive payments of $4,500. The property management company formally evicted her, changing the locks on a Tuesday afternoon. Her social execution was even more precise. The women in the silk dresses blocked her phone number and scrubbed her entirely from their social media profiles. The local Charlotte business networks completely blacklisted her. She went from being the loudest, most entitled voice in the room to a total ghost. 7 months passed. Winter melted into a crisp, quiet spring. I was sitting on my back porch drinking black coffee, watching the sunrise over the tree line, when my phone vibrated on the wooden table. An audio message arrived from an unregistered number. I tapped the screen. My mother's voice leaked through the speaker, heavy with manufactured exhaustion and manipulative guilt. "Phoenix, it is your mother. Please call me back. Harper lost her apartment. She is sleeping in your old bedroom. Your father and I had to drain $65,000 from our retirement savings just to keep her out of bankruptcy. She cries all day. We are drowning. You are still her sister. We are still your family. You need to come home and help us fix this. I listened to the entire 2-minute message. My heart rate stayed perfectly steady. My hands did not shake. I did not feel a single drop of guilt, obligation, or anger. I simply looked at the digital audio wave on the screen, pressed my thumb against the glass, and hit delete. I permanently blocked the number. I took a slow sip of my coffee, relishing the absolute silence of my own backyard. I let them sink in the very ship they chose to drill holes into. My life now is entirely my own. I traded the suffocating tension of my parents' living room for a chosen family built on genuine respect and shared hardship. My holidays are no longer spent walking on eggshells waiting for a narcissistic tantrum. I spend my Sundays at a local diner, sitting across from men and women who have earned their stripes through grit and integrity. We share plates of food, we share quiet laughter, and we share a bond forged in mutual trust. My peers do not care about designer labels or corporate titles. They care about character. They treat me with the dignity I earned, and my home is finally an unbreakable sanctuary. Looking back, the psychology of what happened is incredibly clear. A narcissist like Harper operates inside a fragile glass house. Their entire existence relies on subjugating someone else to build themselves up. They do not have genuine confidence. They have a superiority complex powered by your suffering. But the true danger is never just the abuser. It is the enablers. Enabler parents are often vastly more toxic than the bully because they demand the victim apologize for bleeding. They will sacrifice their strongest child to appease their sickest child simply to avoid dealing with a tantrum. They gaslight you into believing your boundaries are acts of violence. If you are trapped in that cycle, you need to understand 3 absolute rules of engagement. Rule number 1. Blood is a biological fact, but family is a strictly earned privilege. Sharing a genetic code with someone does not give them a lifelong, unrestricted pass to disrespect you, abuse you, or drain your resources. You owe 0 loyalty to people who treat your existence like a burden. Protect your peace at all costs. Rule number 2. True power is completely silent. The loudest person in the room is always the weakest. You never have to scream to prove your worth. You never have to justify your career, your income, or your choices to people committed to misunderstanding you. Build your competence in the dark. Let your results speak so loudly they deafen your critics. Rule number 3. Never interrupt your enemy when they are making a fatal mistake. The absolute best revenge is stepping completely out of the way. Stop shielding toxic people from their own consequences. When you remove yourself from the equation, their true nature is forced into the light, and they will systematically destroy their own lives without you having to lift a single finger. I am Phoenix Allen, and I am finally free. Are you holding on to a toxic relationship just because you share a last name? What would happen if you finally stopped playing their game and let reality catch up to them? Let me know in the comments.